As Moshe Rabbeinu is nearing the very end of his life, he tells the Yidden the rewards, the great things that will happen when we follow Hashem's commands, but more famously recorded in this week's Parsha are the curses, the bad things that will befall on the Jewish people if and when they do not listen to his commandments. Interestingly enough, this is not the first time curses are mentioned in the Torah. Parshas Bechukoisai, which we read a couple months ago, also details Hashem's punishments to the Yidden if they do not behave. But what really makes the connection here is that this week's Parsha and Parshas Bechukoisai are both read coming up to a holiday, a Yom Tov. Parshas Bechukoisai is read around the time before Shavuos, and Parshas Ki Savo, this week's Parsha, is read around the time before Rosh Hashanah. And that is where we have to notice the pattern. Everything in the Torah is exact, and therefore if we are reading about curses in front of these two famous Jewish holidays, there must be a special connection between the two ideas. Because if anything, it makes no sense that we would read about things that in a way could get us depressed as we lead up to two holidays which are supposed to represent happiness. Shavuos, it goes without saying, we are very happy that we received the Torah. And if we look at Rosh Hashanah through the correct lens, we will find that too. That it is not a day of sadness. It's a day of happiness and hope that we will be inscribed for a good year. So why, when we want to get ourselves in the right mind to be inscribed for a good year, when we want to get ourselves in the right mind to accept the Torah with happiness, why before these two holidays do we read a long list of curses that will happen if you step out of line? That doesn't make us happy, it'll make us feel the opposite. So explains the Rebbe, we got it all wrong. Because if you read the list of curses, and in this week's Parsha there's no shortage, there's 98 of them mentioned. If you read them and come out depressed, you never fully understood what it was meant to be. There's a story said about the second Lubavitcher Rebbe, Reb Doivber, known as the Mittler Rebbe, who every year, when it came time to this week's Parsha, he would hear his father, the Baal HaTanya, the first Chabad Rebbe, Reb Shneir Zalman, lane this week's Parsha from the Torah. One year his father was out of town, so another person of the community took his place and read the curses of this week's Parsha. When hearing the curses, the Mittler Rebbe fell into a deep faint, after which he woke up and explained that the reason why he fell into a faint is because this was the first year he perceived the curses as curses and not as hidden blessings. When his father read it, he read it with such a passion, with the right mindset, that the curses were no longer curses, they were blessings in disguise. Explains the Rebbe that while we're not necessarily capable of experiencing this reality to the extent of the Mittler Rebbe, we can certainly try to internalize it at least a little bit. Because both leading up to Shavuos, the giving of the Torah, and leading up to Rosh Hashanah, which is the beginning of the year, require cleansing, purifying not just the body but the soul. And that involves a person washing himself thoroughly, going through his actions and finding the faults and then removing them. If the doctor would tell you you're perfectly fine every single time you went to him, either you're perfect, or the more likely scenario, he's a bad doctor. Someone who thinks it's better to make you happy than tell you about your faults. So when you look at the punishments as not just a punishment, but the Torah giving us a warning that as we come to Yom Tov, as we come to whether it be Shavuos, the giving of the Torah, or whether it be in our present circumstance leading up for the new year, we need to make sure we're perfectly clean. And therefore the Torah gives us warnings around these times to make sure that happens. What's even more interesting is that when it comes to this week's Parsha, there are double the amount of curses mentioned than they are in Parshas Bechukoisai before Shavuos. In this week's Parsha, there are 98 curses, whereas earlier in the Torah, Parshas Bechukoisai only mentions 49. The reason for this is, when it comes to Shavuos, Hashem is giving us the Torah. We do not require as much of a cleaning because we are not the one doing the service. God is coming down and giving us the Torah. However, when it comes to Rosh Hashanah, we need double the amount of cleaning because while Shavuos begins with Hashem reaching down to us, Rosh Hashanah begins with us reaching up to Hashem. That involves a stronger level of service, a stronger dedication to His Torah and His mitzvahs, and therefore must require a much stronger power wash to make sure we're fitting for this occasion. So as we read the Torah this week, let's not look at the curses as curses, but rather as blessings in disguise. As the Torah warning us, make sure you're ready, because with the proper mindset, Hashem will surely seal us for a ksiva v'chasima tova, a happy and sweet new year, ultimately culminating with becoming a Mashiach. May He come speedily in our days. Wishing you a good Shabbos.